Answer these questions quickly in your head. Which is smaller, a grain of sand or a red blood cell inside your body? And how much smaller is it? If all the water in every sea and ocean on Earth were gathered into one sphere, how large would it be? And how far away is the moon that hangs in our sky? Make your guesses now. In a moment, we will look at the real scales. Almost everyone gets them wrong. More interestingly, we tend to get them wrong in the same direction. That is because our brains are familiar with size only around the scale of our own bodies. When something is extremely small, extremely large, or extremely far away, our intuition keeps distorting it. And today, we are traveling from a grain of sand all the way to outer space to see how our brains fool us about scale. Start with the smallest things. Pick up a single grain of sand. It already feels tiny, doesn't it? So tiny that it is difficult to pinch between your fingers. Now think about the countless red blood cells drifting through your bloodstream. We tend to group a grain of sand and a blood cell together as tiny things, as if they must be roughly the same size. But in reality, they belong to completely different worlds. Imagine enlarging one red blood cell until it is as big as a mung bean. At that same scale, the grain of sand beside it would become a giant boulder towering over your head. Across the width of a single grain of sand, dozens of red blood cells could line up side by side, and by volume, one grain of sand could hold millions of red blood cells. We call both of them small, yet the gap between them is enormous. Our brains like to toss every tiny thing into the same pile, even though the world of small things contains many layers within layers. Now move to something that seems more abundant than almost anything else: water. Wherever we look, we see water. Seas, oceans, and rivers cover nearly 3/4 of Earth's surface. That makes the water on our planet feel almost limitless. But imagine gathering all the water on Earth, from the oceans, from underground, and from the air, into one round sphere and placing it beside the planet. The result is startling, because that sphere looks painfully small. Compared with the whole Earth, it is only one round drop. The reason is that the water we see spreads across a huge area, but it is shallow, a thin layer resting on the surface. It is like a thin film of water coating the skin of an apple. We assume there is an enormous amount because we can see how widely it spreads. What we never see is just how thin that layer really is. Finally, look up at the moon. In cartoons, and even in our imagination, the moon often floats close to Earth, as if we could almost reach it. The real distance is much greater, farther than our intuition can easily grasp. Imagine placing Earth and the moon on the same ruler. The gap between them is wide enough for the other planets in our solar system to almost fit inside it. Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune could be lined up in one row across that space. Yet from the ground, the moon still seems to hang nearby. This is the same trap again. Our brains understand distances across a city, or perhaps across a region. At the scale of space, we compress everything until it looks much closer than it really is. The empty distances in space are vastly wider than they feel. Now look back over the whole journey. The red blood cell that seems similar to a grain of sand is actually dozens of times smaller. All the water on Earth that seemed unimaginably vast gathers into a single drop. And the moon that seemed close is far enough away for an entire row of planets to sit in the gap. Notice that every mistake points in the same direction. We keep pulling everything toward the scale of our own bodies. Something extremely small never feels quite that small. Something extremely far away never feels quite that far. Our brains were not built to understand scales far larger or smaller than ourselves. They were built to help us survive in a world roughly the size of a person. Once you know about this blind spot, leave room for reality the next time you encounter something extremely small or extremely far away. The truth is often more extreme than you imagine. That is the extraordinary hiding inside the ordinary.